Hi, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Well, after the first showing that I did of some of the pictures in my portfolio of artwork that I did long before I came to the Philippines, I thought I'd do a part two of this little, it's a very humble little portfolio, nothing like you would expect, but that became the style. Was rather than lugging a great big bag around, which I had, you could get a small portfolio like this and it would do the job exactly. Now of course you take a laptop around and you have everything on your laptop. That's the way to do it. But I'll change over the camera so that I can, instead of looking at my ugly face, you can look at some of my work. So what you're looking at right now is, actually this is a cat water bowl. Lady who had the idea when she was watching her favorite animal, which was a cat. Well, I understand that. My favorite animal is Golden, our cat. But anyway, she noticed that the cat liked to drink from the faucet that was left not quite turned off. So as you can see there, you can see a little stream, gentle stream of water going down into that pool of clean water. This is not a huge piece, right? It's as big as you might expect for a cat bowl. So it has a pump that is hidden in here, and the pump drains the water from the bowl and takes it back up to the top and pours it out again. So the cat always has clean water and drinks in the spoiled princess way that favourite cats do. So there we have it. There's another little shot of it which gives a different angle, and all of those tiers of sculpted clay. This is actually, of course, this is not the original. This is a first copy, in fact an only copy, because the lady paid for everything. She paid for all the materials, my time. It was about, back then, believe it or not, like a $4,000 job. Amazing when I think about it now. But I gave her the mold, everything. So she bought all of it. And her rights, her idea, not to be duplicated and given out to other people, which of course it wasn't. So let's have a look at the next. Okay, well, this one I called this guy, this was Eddie. Well, you can see why, can't you? Because it actually does look quite a bit like Eddie Murphy in the end. It wasn't intentional. I actually sculpted this piece. This is about 8 or 9 inches tall. Okay, and it's wall mounted, as you can probably guess there. And it was based on a character that I saw, a black performer, an American, African American I should be saying now to be politically correct. And I took the inspiration from that face and that hairdo. He actually was called Flat Top, and you can see why. And I took that and I stylized it a lot more, of course. And you'll notice that Eddie has a gold tooth, which was kind of stylish for black Americans, and he has those very cool sunglasses. Okay, and he's also got his earphone. Right, and you'll see why this was interesting, because now this is a slightly bigger picture, but you can see that actually this is the same sculpture. It's the same sculpture, different glasses, different colour of hair. Of course, this one is yellow, blue eyes, and Eddie is black hair and very, very dark brown eyes. Of course he would be. So, different kind of earrings there, and this is, I called this one Buzz. And that's the kind of character that I thought he was. Now, of course, Buzz has a diamond. He has a diamond in his teeth, and then a cool this was like a kind of an Egyptian eye, an earring that I found somewhere and utilize it for this. And then I make those glasses up, paint it differently. It's the same sculpture, and look, maybe we should be looking at this as an idea of we're all the same under the colour of our skin. But anyway, I like these two, and it illustrated to me just how different people can look at things. And I put these two heads into a box. That sounds a bit bizarre, doesn't it? Put the two, and I took it round to a couple of galleries, places where they were selling this kind of stuff. Not terrifically expensive pieces. Is about I think actually, wow, I think it might even have the price on there. $175. So not terrifically expensive. But then these are mouldings, castings I should say, from a silicone mould. Left all this behind when I came out here to the Philippines. So that was a piece. I actually really like this piece. It actually wasn't a huge runaway success. Now this piece I did for a penthouse photographer with a huge amount of equipment. Back then you needed all of this equipment to do what he did. Now of course it's all digitalized, and you can do this now with a very simple setup. Let me show you what the full piece was. So there's the full piece of furniture there, and then on the top there you can see that that's a screen, and that was for his showing. And I guess he would duplicate lots of different things. You can see there's lots of different electronic pieces there, and duplicated as well for duplicating copies of videos, and it would be videos back then. And that was done with a kind of an Egyptian look to it, and it had scarab beetles, as you can see there. Look, if I can get that in. And around the edge, around that edge motif, I actually did a bit of research, and I found a load of hieroglyphics. Of course, I have no idea what they meant. Could have been talking about anything for me, but anyway, I actually did do the hieroglyphics, which I carved into the side there and did in a kind of a gold leaf effect. And then these pillars are actually made of PVC pipe. So quite a bit of design work goes into that. Well, that was for that. And the next one, I used to love going to places like Charing Cross Station, Waterloo Station. I used to like going to those stations because they have this heavy, what can we call it, heavy engineered, and they're cast pieces which are put together, and they hold up these very complex, well-engineered ceilings, very high ceilings in these railway stations. And it's kind of, if you look at this now, it's kind of reminiscent of the kind of engineering and moving parts that you might see on one of the old steam locomotives, and I particularly like that. This is all done in wood, by the way, except for those legs, which were carved in wood, and then let me see, what would I call it, a mould was made, and then they were cast in fiberglass. So that's what there. Now of course there you've actually got, that actually is copper piping, and it's then painted copper, and these overlaid pieces, they're all in wood. And that's actually like a conference table. This is one end of it, and this is detail. It's all carved, It's meant to simulate the kind of moulded pieces that you would see holding up any kind of Victorian machinery, which I particularly liked. And there's the other there. So I really was quite into this kind of industrial looking but prettied up. It's not the machine, it's a duplicate of it, and it's a piece that is inspired by all of that heavy industrial and Victorian, mostly Victorian pieces. All of those parts there, they're not rivets, they're a special stainless steel nut, self-tapping screw, which went in and just decorated the piece. It wasn't there to perform any functional service. This I actually called my Batman. It was all part of what I actually named Batman inspired stuff. Very gothic looking. You can see there. This is also, you'll notice that if you've followed the other pictures in my portfolio, you will have seen the Rocketeer cabinet, which is very much in this style, and it was all done about the same time. I did this. This piece was the first. It's the Batman shelf. I also did this piece. This piece is now owned by Jim Latta, who was the owner of Icons replicas, Icons authentic replicas, and Jim and I are still friends, and he tells me that he still has this cabinet, and he also has the Rocketeer cabinet, which he particularly liked, and he says that it still gets a lot of comments. This was just some spare what I call perspex. You if you're an American, you would call it plexiglass, and that's a coffee table with one of my sculpted pieces on it, which you can see there. So, on to the next. Even I don't know what the next piece is. Well, I'm not sure that you'll recognize either of these now, because you're used to the old fart look that I have, but at one time I used to be a lot younger. That's me on the right, just in case you have any doubts. That was not me in fancy dress. You might recognize who this is. This was a piece that I did for someone who failed to come through with the final payment, so they needed to do that in order to redeem the piece, and they didn't do that, so I kept the piece and later sold it on to another customer. And there is the entire piece. It was full size, as you can see there. Look, I'm standing next to the piece. Now, the way that sometimes it happens when you are commissioned to do a piece, especially for someone which has special appeal to that person, you get a sizable deposit in good faith, and then you proceed and you do the piece. Well, I proceeded and I did the piece, didn't get paid, and then later I sold that on to a movie theatre restaurant in Chicago somewhere. So there is the Tin Man, the Tin Woodsman. As a kid I always called him the Tin Man, but apparently he was the Tin Woodsman. Now this on a whim, my bizarre sense of humour. I remember thinking that if Dracula had a tombstone, what would it look like? So I made this table up. This was a coffee table. This was my Dracula coffee table. And that's it there. And you can see that it's an ancient it's an ancient tombstone. It's actually made in what I called chipboard, but particle board in America is what it's called, and that's what it was there. And then I make all of that distressing with obviously I carved those letters of Dracula out. Where am I? Carved the letters, and they're distressed. In California they love distressed furniture. It's a big thing, probably no more now. But anyway, I made that so that it looked like a cracked and ancient tombstone. And then the legs, well, the legs were made of wood, and there were the bat footings. Okay, on to the next. Now I made this piece. This is a Batman over Gotham City, and maybe I should start with that one there really. It's a bookshelf which is about 6 feet long. As you can see there, it's over the bed there, and it looks like it's meant to look like the skyline of Gotham City. And there you will see Batman. How can I do this? There's Batman with Robin clutching onto him, silhouetted against the moon, and at the top of the buildings in Gotham City. This piece still remains unsold. I had one man who was very, very interested, but unfortunately he wanted to steal it for far too little, and I decided against selling. So it's actually in storage in Fort Myers, and this, what you're looking at now, is the clay sculpture and the reference pictures that I used in order to sculpt the Tin Man. And there I've got what in the original thing would have been a filler, an oil filler, isn't it? A funnel. And there is the clay Tin Man. Then I made up a mold from that, a silicone mold, and then I cast it. Let me see, I'm getting ahead. I cast it, and then you saw you will soon see the final head, which is, why don't I skip it and show you. So there's a close-up of the final thing. That's a little bit gay looking, don't you think, with that blue eyeshadow, and a bit gothic looking with the black lipstick. But that stood spookily by my front door for a year before I finally sold it to someone else. Here's some more, another picture of the metal look piece that I made for the recording studio. And I made it so those cabinets, which would hold the electronic parts, usually they would be skulking around the back trying to do repairs or pulling out the pieces that would do their electronic deeds. And what I did was I made it so that they would make extra cables. They'd be able to pull the whole thing out, just turn around the cabinet and be able to work from the back or unhook them if they needed to, which they thought was a great addition. In the top there you've got a place for a monitor screen, and then that was where the 24 channeled mixer went. Okay, I did this for, as you can see, for a company that was going to be a stud farm. This was actually the lady that did the brokering on my house that I bought, where I had my workshop studio later. So she did that, and she did her job, and I did mine, and I produced this piece, which her goal in life was to have a stud farm, and she wanted to call that Rohan. Now, isn't that strange? Now we have Jessica, my sister-in-law, and she has a child called Rohan. Things certainly come around. This is actually another relief which I particularly like doing, and you get great detail in it. All of that design came from just a very simple thumbnail, a thumbnail drawing which was not even an inch square. And this one, well, it's our quizzical dinosaur again. I really like doing the dinosaurs, and I like that with the crooked sort of grin with his jaw is slightly off to the right and one tooth showing out, and he's got his chin in his hands. Who knows, maybe they did have hands. Well, probably not quite with that expression, but it's very detailed, has all of the scales that you would expect, and that one tooth. So, I think that's the end of this little portfolio. We're ending with the Tin Man again. Actually, I have a great affection for the Tin Man. He was a great piece to do. I really enjoyed making this piece. It was a shame that it kind of got not nasty, but it did cause a lot of problems. Begging and begging to get paid, not getting paid. But at the end of it, I had kept the piece, and then I sold the piece, and I made my money. And I actually enjoyed having this piece there. Sometimes when you're an artist or a writer, you make a piece of work, whether you write it or whether you actually sculpt it, and it's not quite the same as being a musician, unless of course you make a recording, and then you might look back at the recording and have the same reaction that you might have if you've made something or you've written something. You can look back and sometimes you say, wow, did I really do that? And sometimes I used to look at the Tin Man and think the same. And there he was, like we were all friends. And right about that time, I went off to China. Oh, and I see that I've been waffling on for, let me see, for 22 minutes, and I get told off by my wife for making videos that are too long. But then we're looking through pictures, and you might find that interesting, and of course there's always the next button, and you can always do that. Well, this is a foreigner in the Philippines. Time to get going, time to wrap up for the night. Thanks for looking in, hope you enjoyed it, and bye for now.